All right. Today on Open Loops, we have Mark and Phyllis Brinkerhoff, married couple, and really, well, Mark he's already told me some amazing stories, and I met Mark at the book premiere, the New York City book launch for Alan Steinfeld's book, Making Contact. And he was introduced, you were introduced as his favorite Martian, and which I loved. And what he said was, yes, this is someone who is he's an extraterrestrial, and you're sitting there going, okay, this guy seems like a very fascinating New Yorker, but these stories are very just truly
Otherworldly?
unbelievable. I was gonna say out of this world,
Otherworldly.
but I didn't want to say the pun. Yes, I mean, no, it's out of this world, and then the best part was you kept talking to me after. The Alan was done. We were going around. People were getting books signed, whatnot. And I went over to you. I said, "Look, Mark, we got to talk. I want to have you on my show. All this stuff." And you just had story after story that it really blew my mind. I had to know more. So happy to have you. Happy to have Phyllis here. Thank you both for coming on.
Phyllis will be a hand today.
Yeah,
Thank
she is
you.
not on
Pleasure.
camera,
We
but
are honored to be here. We are honored to be here with you, Greg.
yes. So, before we really rolled into this, I asked you how you would describe yourself, and it was an extraterrestrial soul in a human form. Uh, Tell me this. Here's what I'm curious about. Usually, I mean, I don't know what is the story we hear now that people have a remembering, right? People they always feel they might feel a little different, but then all of a sudden one day they might have something that triggers a memory of not being from this planet. Um, what was it like for you growing up? I mean, did you always know you weren't from here? What exactly did you know that you were different than the other human beings, Mark?
I'm what they call an Earth of Walkin. I came in with consciousness from before where I come from space, and took over a body that was to be stillborn birth.
So basically, we coined a new word for Mark. He's a conscious
Conscious
walk-in.
walk-in. Because I
Oh,
have I've met some walk-ins now recently, yes, on Zooms and everything, but I'm still not meeting a walk-in that I hate the word walk-in too, because we don't call it that when we do this, when we come in. But
yeah.
it's like I haven't met somebody that remembers where and what they did and where they're really from. That I get these people who remember, well, I'm not from here, come in, but they can't get all the information of where they're from and all that other information. To me, that's like your history, or like, if you had a vacation a year ago, you might, or 6 months ago, you still have the memory of that vacation that was so fun or whatever. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's beyond that. I remember all the way back and before. I remember birth. I remember everything, being in an incubator, telepathically talking to everybody, having watching how they would respond to the telepathy, like your parents. So even though your baby voice might be crying and doing something else, telepathy was telling them, I'm thirsty. I was saying things like that. So I knew we could communicate. And that's why the mothers and the fathers have that connection to the babies, especially when they love them and want them. There are people who don't have a connection to their children.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's what it's like. And the mothers have an intuition with the child and the father too. If a mother's not there and a father's raising a baby or a child, that the intuition is there, same as the mother. It's very strong with the parents. So I also remember how babies can hear clearly 100% as a little baby, and how your ears open up
Well, but wait a
and
minute.
everything later to hear clearer.
I have to jump in and say that the thing that makes Mark unique is that when he was coming to take over that little body that where the other spirit left, he was an adult consciousness, and so he sort of always was an adult consciousness in this little body, even though it wasn't always like it wasn't, he wasn't behaving exactly like who he was. So basically he was always remote viewing his own existence on the higher planes of consciousness, which I really don't think people today do. They don't even understand the word that we also coined called lucid remote viewing.
Yeah, I wanted to know what that was. What is that exactly?
Lucid remote viewing is what Mark does every day of his life. So
That's what we call it because we can't explain it.
because he's just talking to himself on a higher level of consciousness. So he's literally seeing through the eyes of his own oversoul into realms, which are just absolutely astonishing, and anybody would want to participate in if they actually knew how
We had a little mock-up we made of that
incredible it was.
idea.
But he's been doing that for his entire life before he came in. And so when he was born, he was not veiled at all. You know, we all kind of, we're all born with the veil of knowledge.
They block certain things from the soul to remember.
Yeah.
I know how it's done. I know what they do. And before I came in, I went to 3 different councils with my crew and friends. And there's a different councils. I know there's people that say, oh, there's this and that. There's a council on Venus around the planet, inside the planet, they're around there, outside the planet. There's a council on Saturn. There's a council, a galactic council outside the solar system that people don't talk about because they probably don't know about it. But the thing is, we went to all these different councils where Sananda is in charge of many of this, all these things that happen. Sananda is the aspect of the creator that we know. And I'll say that he is not the one known as we call the sun, or what the sun is. So Sananda, the being known as Sananda, is not a fallen angel, it's not a demon. It means son of love, Sananda. But he is also the same being, the same creator, is the only creator, came in to be walking the planet Earth as Yehoshua 2,000 plus years ago. So it's the same person, but beyond. And we have drawings I made of him to show the people that on higher realms, higher dimensional planes of space, not just around planet Earth, he's not seen as Sananda around the planet Earth. He is seen above the 10th planes and 9th planes as Sananda. That's how he appears. He's very androgynous looking.
Yeah.
Comes in as a blonde being with tan. I made lighter skin here because he's seen many different forms. He's even seen as gold. I've seen him as golden, with golden eyes, and the Holy Spirit version of the way the creator looks. The creator is one being, one huge energy being, totally conscious of everything, conscious life, light, everything. It's all conscious.
Not a hologram.
Not hologram.
Yeah.
And then you got the sun, which is the way the creator projects itself to communicate to the children, us, the angels, all of us, children and souls and angelics, everything in life, projects to us as Sananda. Yet the creator as father, mother, father, or whatever, can project too on the ships and come through to us also if it wants to, and it has in the past. So the creator looks as one being, as an infinite androgynous creator being, if it's going to manifest to us. So it comes to us as Sananda, who comes in a masculine form, but has this androgynous feel with him. And we know he does look androgynous, but wow, you don't want to, you feel the power of this infinite creator right there with him. Then he comes through as this being, the other aspect we call, or Sananda says, the Holy Spirit. That's a real, actual, another projection of the creator. So you have a creator in 3 types of personalities, even though it's one being. It comes through to these different dimensional spaces. And no one's ever known this, and we never talked about it, but we've been recently feeling, Sananda's been telling me to start explaining it better, because when I met him physically here in the house, he actually came here back in 1997. He came through as a teenager to me and physically appeared in our room. So I talked with him. So I asked him, what do you want me to do? What is it more in this mission I'm supposed to do? Because I was doing artwork. He said, do what you do and say what you say. So I said, okay, do what I do here. say what I say here, or do what I do here and there, and say what I say here, there? And he said, all of it. So now he telepathically told me everything. There's not enough time left. That's what he said. So it's not enough time for the children to come home if they don't get it together. And so
when we say that, we mean a lot of people are going to be recycling back to the same old first level of consciousness,
like reincarnating,
which we're on now. And they're not going to get to the higher planes where they can stay, which is what everybody talked about. Buddha, I mean, all the great sages talked about it.
This is my first time in a physical dense body like this, in this physical realm, this dense realm. I've been on the other realms.
Yeah.
But not physically born here on a dense level. And we've come through being ethereal, come through, walk on these levels here in this physical density, just like here. But this is the first time I've been born into the density. So now, because I've come in and took over somebody else's body that left, and then the baby died in my mother's womb.
Remember, he didn't take it over before the spirit left.
No, spirit left, and then the baby was dead in my mother's tummy, and it was 8 months. And that's when I was watching with my angel, guardian angel, and highway in the sky above the hospital. But you see it like you're above about 25 feet up or 50 feet up, something like that. You see it. And she says to me, do you want to try this one? So that was the one I went down to check the mother. And the angel was there. That is the veiling angel. She was there. Now with the councils, I was telling you before I didn't get into it, we had to go through a whole bunch of councils to get here. And because I've not been here born or anything before, I don't have a karma here. I don't have karma in this physical realms because I come from a different realm. But they said who can come in? So it was me, as well as I was coming in to rescue or save my soulmate. But I won't say rescue. What was the word we like to say?
Well, bring me home.
Bring your home.
Get me off of that incarnational cycle.
Right.
The oversouls, we call also true self, original selves, push aspects off of them, energy self. So the same way Yehoshua or an angel like Archangel Michael can be in many places on the planet Earth at once, because there's only now. So as Yehoshua can do too, anywhere it wants to be. Creator can be anywhere it wants to be. So that's Sananda. But as overparts, we can project on the oversoul level aspects of ourselves, which is to make like almost children, but not children. So the people that are on Earth now, like you here too, you'd be an aspect of your overpart and higher self is working over different frequencies here on different planes in the heaven realms, maybe, probably, or on the ships right above Earth too. So the higher self connects with the soul's aspect here on the Earth because it's all yourself. And your higher self might be what you would consider a future self. If you met him, he might look like a space person. Usually with the people I'm dealing with, that's what's going on. But this is the way it happens. As an oversoul, I am a higher self aspect here right now.
So are you saying that everybody here on this planet, for the most part, because I'm curious, and again, there's so many different directions we could go here. I mean, I'm sitting here going, wait,
I know I went off track. I'm sorry.
There's beings on Venus. I mean, when we talk about Venus and Saturn, let me start with this: Venus, Saturn. And you also mentioned the council that's somewhere out in the universe that we don't even know about.
The galactic councils they're like interplanetary.
Right.
They're intergalactic as well. So they're intergalactic, meaning they're in between the galaxies. So they're in deep space. Yeah. And they're monitoring areas within the galaxies here. It's galaxy, Andromeda, let's say those. So they will monitor also with Sananda what's going on and who's coming into different areas. They know we're here and they know our crews are here in the solar system.
You might want to show.
Oh.
We do a lot of teaching on the planes of consciousness. And so the ones that are around the planet, there's 7 of them because they kind of correspond to chakras, sort of in a way. But there's many more after that. So the ones above the 7th become celestial.
Yeah.
I learned everything I know from Marc. So now you're into cosmic frequencies, which is where Marc's coming from. and
Well,
which is
well,
where
this is
I'll
what
be
I was
going.
wongering, Phyllis, about
Give me an
the
idea.
idea. Oh
That's the
my
idea.
gosh, the seven planes of the.
When
Whoa.
you see this, do you read it forward speech for you,
I
Is it
can
going
see it.
or
I
is
backwards?
it
can see it.
reverse?
It's forwards, actually, for me.
It's okay for you
It's
because it's
forward.
reverse for me.
That's okay.
Yeah,
It's
that's
So,
good.
backward.
so he sees the point to the. Do you see the dark circle around the Earth?
That
Yeah, yeah,
circle,
yeah.
That's the lower astral
that's the
plane.
low plane. That's the what we would consider all of us as a kind of hellish realm, and how it
Right.
interacts with the physical Earth here. So this is the realm they're cast to.
And it interferes with us. It
go ahead.
interferes with us getting to these higher planes and
It's-
staying there because there's so much interference coming in from lower frequency beings who that's where they gain power from taking our power away by keeping us incarnating back to this planet or any other planet. It's not just Earth.
I have it
Right.
upside down. Sorry, did I do that upside down?
So
No, no,
kind
no,
of
you did it.
confused
It was
already.
good. It was
So
good to me.
Mark's coming from the planes of consciousness outside
Way out here,
of the
far
one
out
that
here.
you're looking, the last one that you're seeing around the Earth, just to try to give you a.
We have way over 12. I've been speaking 12-dimensional plane. We're actually planes levels since I was probably in the 5th or 6th grade. So that's back 1960s. But I was telling people back then, kids I knew, I was saying, yeah, do you go to those other planes? And they didn't know what I was talking about. So when I learned about the 7 planes from other people that were doing yoga or things like that, they were talking about different teachings, and they talked about the 7-dimensional planes. I started looking into that from the paperwork that they might have shown me. And I saw remember how they have a person there with an aura or a body,
But
spiritual
also-
bodies going around it.
But within each plane are many
Yeah.
planes.
This is our little synopsis of how best to say it, because it's hard to explain it.
Right.
Okay, if this is first plane, this is the first plane, let's say.
This is
Within it are many frequencies or dimensional planes, dimensional spaces. They're not planes, they're dimensional spaces, which is where Ethereal life is too.
at the
And
higher.
up here. Lower plane is lower astral, negative beings, whatever they're doing, satanic creatures as well. And then this is the first density, the first plane.
But
That's where they're located.
that isn't how many there are. There's far more
Oh,
than
no,
that.
it's just an idea
Just to give
of
a
leveling
visual.
frequencies to show inside this whole plane are many frequencies of higher frequencies and the higher and higher and higher and lower.
Yeah.
So when people say we're moving into, you've heard this before, 20 years now, so we're moving into a 4th density or a 4th dimension. Now they're
Yeah.
trying to say we're moving into a 5th dimension. And I
Yeah.
just always want to say, really? Because that's not how it works.
It's not
how it works.
It's not one of these. It's somewhere.
In there, the one we just showed.
It's a dimension within the first dimension of Earth,
yeah.
but they don't know that.
If you're going into a 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensional space, you're within the first plane here. If you're going to the 4th plane, 6th plane, you're in the heaven realm now. So to get there, you're not physical anymore. You're dead, or physical body is gone. You're in your other body now. You're in a glorified body form, which is what these forms are that we have in space. These are called what we would call them glorified body form. You take on the form that fits you, that you resonate with as a form, and it could be something a being you've been in a past time in another galaxy. So I've seen cat people, and there's different people that are out there, and they're taking on different forms for fun.
But let's slow down.
It's for fun.
But let's slow down. So are you beginning to see that this is not your regular UFO story?
Am I beginning to?
No.
No, this is very interesting, and it's just because the closest thing I can think of
You wouldn't even be talking to Mark if he didn't have all those UFO photos that he's taken. If you go to his site, he's taken countless UFO photos, and really quite spectacular, really.
Yeah, we're gonna link everybody to that, because there are some remarkable pictures here.
We also have some from the 70s that were the first ones when MUFON checked me out in 1977, a long time ago, with an investigator that became a friend who's now passed on. I assume he's been long. I was 20 and he was 40 when I met him. So I haven't heard from him for a while.
It sounds
But
as if your story is different than some other, than many other contactees. I mean, the thing that's interesting about this field in general is that, and I've heard this said multiple ways, but I think Clarence Mitchell is the one. I've had him on the show before. He's the one that told me I first heard him put it well. It's that everybody's got a piece of the puzzle, and there's never a complete picture. But what I'm wondering is this, Mark. Have you ever met anybody? Are there people out there that are making even close to similar kind of claims as you, that you could say, "Oh yeah, I've seen this person on this plane before," or in terms of corroborating evidence that your experiences are a thing? Is there anybody else out there?
I can't say that I've met someone who's done what I've done or been on the ships where I've been, because I come from a high plane.
Mm,
Most people are coming in either incarnating or the walk-ins I've met, which are only a few now, have had past life on planet Earth. And so they came in to help again, but they do claim and feel they're not from Earth, they're from space. Some of them, especially a few of them, I know in space, but I won't say I know them on the high plane where I come from. I know them from working around the ships here with the Alliance crews and different ones. So I feel that a lot of them are working on these ships that we see around our galaxy or this solar system. So these are people I came in with a mission that I was given to help. I know I'm not like anyone else here, and even my crew in Sananda, they said I'm for the few and not the many. And then recently they said, well, you're for the very few and not the many, because very few people hear what I'm saying and understand or try to understand it, but then they actually get experiences with me on the ship or come out, then they know. But they get convictions inside, is that the word for it? That the truth is the truth. And what I'm telling them about something that I'm telling you, I know information that the Bible doesn't have. I got information from Sananda Yehoshua since I was a kid, when I was out of body with him, that the Bible does not have. He says it was taken out. It was taken out. So I understood something happened until I got older. Then I realized there was that councils of Nicaea and other things that happened. So they took information out.
Like reincarnation.
Yeah, reincarnation they took out on purpose, I think.
But before you go there,
so they can control.
I wanted to answer the question that he initially asked. Is there any other corroboration? And really, you could say Ingo Swan was a corroboration the day that he met Mark.
Yes, Ingo Swan, my buddy.
Talk about Ingo. I've talked a little bit about remote viewing on this show and people who the history of remote viewing, but I'd love to hear your experiences.
When I met Ingo, I know Ingo from before, and I know him. And when I first saw an article in a magazine, which I still own somewhere, but when he gave a talk or something in the magazine, the cover was him on a science magazine, I think it was. And I showed my dad way up Mayapack, New York. This is back in 1974, maybe 5. And I showed him the picture and I said, see this guy? And I said, I know him. He's in space. And he does what I do. And he's painting the paintings that I understand, but don't make sense. If you're a physical person looking at them, his artwork doesn't make sense if you see the beautiful art from space. But he has lines, he has different things, he has coordinates, he sometimes has things that look like bullseye effects. And it's what you might see from a spaceship when you're traveling into space. They will have different things set up. There are lines in space that we travel. People want to say, oh, it's a ley line. It's beyond that. It's a frequency line, so we travel on some of them. And so you might see these patterns on a screen if you're looking at a screen to look out where you're traveling in space. So things that Ingo painted, lines and doing these dimensional things, are things that we see on our screen effects when we're monitoring where we're heading or what we're doing. And then we go, and then you see the beautiful panoramic view of space where we're going, or the nebulas, and traveling through them and things like that. So I understood his painting, but I don't think my wife at the time, seeing Ingo's painting, would understand what he was painting. It just looked modern-y and spacey, and yet he had lines going through space into distance. he had lots of things, but I understood what he was seeing. And so I told my father, I said, he sees what I've seen on the ships. He's seeing the patterns that are there that you don't see in space. You don't see these lines that he drew. So I told my father at that time, and someday I'm going to meet him. And he says, really? You've said that so many different times. And it always comes true later on. I said, yeah, but I know I'll meet him someday. I don't know when, I don't know where. They'll guide it, they'll arrange it. It's okay. I met Betty Hill the same way back in
But
'76.
finish with Ingo.
So
Oh.
yeah, that
So many
yeah.
stories. I know this is. I know you're gonna have to be a recurring guest. There's no way we're gonna get to all of this. But okay.
Oh no, it's
Well, I think the
deep
Ingo,
stuff.
you're right, Greg. The Ingo story is fascinating though, because
Just
we
look.
were
Yeah.
we were put together by
We're brought together
a
by a
mutual friend who thought we
and
should meet.
yeah, we had two friends who wanted us to meet. One set up a quick party one day in 1993 or four, and we came in and Ingo was there, and I had at that time I had a portfolio like a binder about that thick, a binder with photographs in it and some artwork pictures, but mostly photos of UFOs and things. And so I carried that around in a bag.
Taken with non-digital camera,
Those are the
Super 8.
Super 8s and
Yeah.
everything. So I brought that with me, and Ingo was sitting on a chair, like a dining room chair. He just sitting there with his little tea or something. No, he had water. And I said, you want to get some tea? You want me to get some tea for you? He said, oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you. So I left him my notebook thing on his lap. And I said, I'll come back and I'll go through it with you, detail what's happening in the pictures of what's going on, blah, 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 blah. So I go to the kitchen to get some tea made. And I was in there with the hostess. And I come out with the tea. And Ingo is closing the book on his lap. And I went, oh, you went through the book? We go together. And I could pull up the chair with you, So now I'm sitting knee to knee with him in a chair. And he has the notebook on what do you call it? The notebook thing on his lap, closed. And he's smiling with his Ingo smile of like, he has a smile he would always have. And I said, oh, so you went through it. He says, oh, yes. I said, I was going to talk to you about some of the pictures. Oh, that's okay, sweetheart. I know what they are. And that's kind of Ingo. So he says, this is the part that gets you. I have a cup of tea. He has a cup of tea. And he's just sitting with my notebook on his lap. And he's going, so must have been very difficult for you to compress all that energy where you come from on those higher planes, to compress it into that little tiny baby inside your mother's stomach.
Oh my gosh.
You saw that? He saw it. No one knows it. Phyllis was the only one who knew that. Compressed from a higher frequency. I felt compressed in, I had to compress down to connect after that soul had left. Because he said, after the other soul left, he says, you're a walk-in. I said, yeah, no one knows that. Phyllis. And so he's telling me what I did.
Wow.
So then he's smirking, and he's so funny the way he talks with you, and he knows he's got you with the information. He sits there like, so I said, yeah, you're right. He says, so also, Mark, did you ever feel very claustrophobic in this life now, since that time and that moment? And I actually said, oh my gosh, Ingo, you're right. Exactly that moment, because something happened to me in the 70s with some friends, and they playfully, they had these trunks at the end of the bed, these big empty trunks that you put clothing in at the end of a bed. And they were all going into the trunk and hanging in it and laughing and lifting it up and closing it. Well, they said, you go in it, Mark, you go in. And I didn't think anything about it. So I go in the thing, and I'm in there. It's like, well, it's a little tight. It's a little tight. And I'm small, but I'm still tight. So I said, yeah, okay. And I pushed on it, and I couldn't lift it up. And they were laughing, and they were sitting on it. Well, suddenly, the whole thing of me coming in came back strongly visually again. I relived it intensely of the claustrophobia I felt as I connected into the body. So suddenly, now I was in almost a panic inside this thing, close it tight like it is.
Wow.
And I said, you got to get off. You got to get off this. Don't do this now. You don't understand what's happening. I'm having a flashback of this really heavy duty, and I'm begging them to get off. And they finally got off. And I came out. They told me, Mark, I came out. And it was pure white. I was so white that I was freaked. And I explained as best I could, but I couldn't tell them the truth at that time. They didn't know about that or UFOs. But I said, something happened, and it brought me a flashback that was so powerful. I don't want to relive it again ever.
But going back
But
to Ingo,
that's what Ingo meant. He saw that. He said,
but
I
then
did
he
have
also
some things.
saw,
Then he also saw, besides me being from space, or where I'm coming from, and how tall we are out there in space, what's the other thing he did?
when he saw the picture of Sarah.
Oh, right. I said, so Ingo, that's right, thank you. He said, I know you're not you, and you're your higher over part in there. And I said, you see me in here, not this person. You see me in here? And he goes, oh, sweetheart. And he flips the page of the notebook open to the portrait of my overpart. He says, I see you. That's you right there. You're looking at me. And I said, Ingo, you're the only one who's ever seen it. No one's ever seen it. Unless you're out of body with me, then you'll see me. So that is what Ingo was, the first psychic ever. He's a super psychic. He was not he was beyond psychic of this planet, really. But he knew, and he could see things. Like he knew things about people. They had no idea what they knew. That was true. Thanks, Phyllis, for reminding me of the way he did that.
And actually,
told the story too many times, but I always forget.
we became very close with him, and we worked on books with him where Mark would do final proofs after everybody else had proofed it, and it was supposed to be good. Mark would take it and he would find mistakes.
Speed read through things,
and it would always amaze.
And he goes, "How did you do that?"
Amazing.
3 proofreaders.
I think Ingo was a triple Virgo, but I'm not sure. And he asked me to work with him on replicating his very precise pencil drawings. So I would scan them, and then I would recreate them in Quark Express, because he would download these incredible visuals to try to express what he was talking about in his books. And so I did that work for him. And so whenever he needed anything like that, he would, I think maybe the last 4 books that he did, he would engage me.
He didn't want to put our names in the book to protect us from the military.
Like the
and then we said, it's
power.
okay. We've had the military over my house in New York in 1970s, circling our house with black helicopters hovering. They knew what I was up to. They were listening to our phone conversations upstate. We didn't even have conference calling. You'd hear them on the line clicking in. So this was happening when my first UFOs were being taken. But also UFOs have visited me since I was up there and 40.5 years old. UFOs were visiting me all the time, and I would be out of body or just walking on the field. Over my house, they appear. So my first physical encounter with my own friends and crew was in 1958 in a school field near my house. And I snuck out of the house. I was supposed to be asleep. I was called. I could feel it. Come to the field. Come here. We're home. Things like that. The feeling was there. My first sighting was a daytime sighting at 3:00 in the afternoon up by the school where I lived near. I was going to a friend's house, and I wasn't supposed to be up there at that time, but I was running. And over the football field, I saw a flash of light, like a reflection, and I stopped to look because I felt something hit me telepathically. So I stopped, I'm looking at the flash, and all of a sudden there it was, a beautiful, perfect sphere of metallic silver, like a mirror. It was beautiful. And it came slowly towards opposite me in the field. I was in the road, and I had to go to a field. So I was in the field, the football field was above the road. But I'm in the road, I'm heading to a friend's house. Meanwhile, school buses are parked, ready to go and leave at around 3:00. So I was trying to run up before they moved. And the sphere moved opposite, stood up, floated opposite me, very low. I estimate 30 feet over trees, roughly. It was low. And the ship itself must have been at least 20, 25 feet diameter, or 30. It was huge, but perfectly beautiful. So I'm looking at it telepathically. I'm hearing what's happening, who's in there, and hello. And I said, you got to take me out of here. You got to take me home. I was always saying that to the ships, but I felt so much love. I started to cry because it was so much love, the blissful love that came from them. And they said, we're always with you. Don't worry. Don't worry. And then I heard the horns honk for the buses, and I ran to the next road. I just started running to get to another road to leave. and the ship was there already in opposite, still there already, and it shot up into the sky very quickly and disappeared. So I got out of the way. The buses, well, I wasn't in the way of buses. I was at my friend's house, but that was the first time. And but I already had been going out of body onto the ships, so I wasn't
Yeah.
familiar with this. The SON. This is called, the ship is a sphere in space. We call it a SON, SOHN. That's the best way of spelling it to me, to say it. So, and funny, in the biblical time, we would be called the sons of God. So interesting, right? It's not sons. It was a different thing. But we are the signs in the sky, the ships and the crews,
Yeah.
and the ones who are here to help, all the different ones throughout time. And many are here, probably from other, were here back then, are here from another, even another galaxy, are coming towards the Earth again to help if they can in these alliances. One thing that happened with me and Ingo that day that made it, for me and Phyllis and I to be very close with him. It was like that was the day that it happened. The day we met Ingo was the day we were family again, because he was family for us in past time, another galaxy. Ingo was like our dad. So we felt that feeling for him. And we would nickname him the captain and things like that. But that day that we met, I said, have you been to the moon? And he says, yes. I said, I'm wondering what you saw. He says, well, what did you see? So I didn't know Ingo's total story of the moon yet, until I saw some of the information. I knew he remote viewed the moon, and saw the other side of the moon, but I didn't know all the things he saw yet until we got to know him better. So
Yeah.
I said, I was there as probably 5 years old, 1958. Remember, when I'm out of body, I'm in my other form. So even as a kid on physical Earth, walking around as a little 5 or 4-year-old, I'm in the body as this being here. I am an adult frequency. So it was very hard for me to communicate. I knew I had to wait, that no one would listen to this little kid talking. I knew if I said things, they wouldn't hear me and listen to me. And I had to pretend I was playing with things and pretend I was playing games with other kids just
So you
to
always
get it.
felt like you were an actor in a way, that
Yeah.
you were playing a role.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I knew things that the kids didn't know, I was puzzled why they didn't know what I knew out of body. I thought everybody's going out, everybody's going to the ship. We called it home. That's the name we gave it, home, because that's our home.
Do you
Now,
have any
planets are not our home.
siblings, Mark? Any siblings? Any?
Now, I have an older brother, but he's not understanding of this.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to say, did you, growing up, were there any memories in the family where you started talking at a dinner table and everybody went, what the heck is wrong with this? I mean, I would think back then, too, that they would really seriously consider, having you go to an institution or something growing up, talking like that.
it's funny. Uh, I was born in Yonkers, which made it a building, a high-rise building. I remember it as a little child. Oh, I remember everything. I remember being in the crib and all that and learning everything. But I would look out the window and see the sky and just wish to come back or go back home. And I found out from my dad as I got a little older that he had seen UFOs. But I knew my father from a past time in space, another long time ago. That's the only reason I connected with him. So he was fascinated by space. He was a mathematical genius, born that way. I was just born with art ability, not the math. But on the other side, I have math like that. And it was frustrating here for me. So I wanted to tell you what happened with Ingo too. And I'll tell you the next part. With Ingo, I said, did you go to the moon? He said, yes. And I said, what did you see? So I said, I was out of body there at about 5 years old, 1958. And I went into the moon. Of course, I'm not a 5-year-old in the moon. I'm the other person. So I went to
Right,
the moon.
right.
I was in there and I was seeing all the things they were doing. It's very scientific inside some of the places I went, but I've been there before from space, from other times. The moon is a satellite, but not like you think it's a spaceship. And it was brought here a long time ago, way back, to help with the balancing of the solar system after the giant planet blew up, which we know today, we call it Maldek. It was one between Jupiter and Mars. It's an asteroid belt. When that exploded by the beings who were on it, They had some kind of war. They did something. They exploded the planet, blew up. This is what they won't let this happen again. The beings, but it was a big planet. So when that one blew up and broke apart, it off balanced our solar system, and the solar systems are all balanced. And so what they do is we have moons and things they bring in, or asteroids to become a moon, like in Mars, which are bases inside. They will bring them in to balance off the system again. Our moon that we have, which is very old and was brought in millions and millions and millions and millions of years ago before dinosaurs. So you can't get how old this solar system is, but the moon was once a core of a ancient planet system out past our galaxy. They brought it in, and because it was the right sizing, plus it's hollow, they made it hollow. So it's a ship. So what they brought it in, it actually has an atmosphere in it on top of it as well. So the thing is, you bring it in, inside is the base, but it is a ship. It can, if it wants to leave, it can. But it's made to stay balanced the way it is with the Earth. It is anchored in that way so that it never moves and doesn't rotate. And that was purposely done for the ship that is in there, what's going on with the people as a base. But on the other side, the dark side of the moon, is more action going on. And so you will see domes or things there on the ground, and some of their buildings that they've had in ancient times as well, and maybe now modern, they had able to move them up and down if they needed to, in and out of the ground, if they needed to disguise it. Because there was stuff happening in these solar systems and different galaxies a long time ago that were dangerous for some of the humanoid type beings there. They look human, but they're not humans. So there were beings that we call the reptilians, and other ones. So they would do things to people. I can't go into that, but that's the reason that they have these domes and things that could come up out of the moon and bring it back down if they needed to disguise it again. That's why things are inside the craters disguised, and they can shield it too. They can create the whole effect to be shielded, that you would think it's a crater and not anything there. They have that ability with holographic-y type stuff. We didn't have the word hologram back in 1958, but what I was seeing in the spaceship when I was physically on it were things that I told my father, were three-dimensional, 3D like us, but they weren't real. And I could walk around them, but they were projections. And I had no word for it except 3D real pictures made real. There was no way I could tell my father. So I interacted with a baby dinosaur on the ship because I love dinosaur. So they wanted to show me something. That's in 1958, physically on board. Even though I was a little 5-year-old kid, they carried me around. They were over 8 feet and change, some of these guys and girls. And they put me on the floor and stood me up there. And I saw different things. I saw the Earth from their monitors, from the windows.
It's round.
Round planet, not a flat planet.
Flat.
We went
I was
around
gonna ask. I was gonna ask if, I've recently heard that we're in a dome, that there's a glass enclosure over the Earth.
And they're going
That's
by Bibles, ancient Bible stuff with firmament and all that. But what they don't understand, what Christ knew, is he said they're spheres. He says it somewhere in the Bible. Someday I'm going to go find where he said that. Besides many mansions in my father's house and all that, there are other things he said. And where they got confused about the four corners of the earth in those ancient days, when people stood on a hill or whatever they were standing on, claiming that's my land out there, thousands of years ago. To them, all they could see was flatness. And to them, in their way of thinking, four corners, north, south, east, west, they thought of it in that way. That's where the misconstrued thing happens. It's okay. It's the way it is. When you're on a planet, everything looks flat.
right.
As soon as you get off planet and further up, you're going to see the whole curvature of it, and you're going to see it. But I don't think people are going far enough away to do that. Some of the astronauts can see it, of course, but I don't know who's being paid to say what, or if they're finding people to pretend they were astronauts to say what they want to say about flat Earth.
Well, do you want to
It's not.
tell him what the crew said about why they did it, why they put forth the
Originally back years ago, I was on Facebook or one of these, whatever. Somebody sent me an email, a friend of mine, talking about flat Earth. This is a long time ago. Oh, like 2000, gosh, man, 2? It was a long time ago. And I saw this and I actually wrote back because he knew my story. So I said to him, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "What is this?" I said, "I've told you I'm going around the planet Earth many times. I've flown into space. We're all around. What are you doing? What is this nonsense you're promoting here?" And he was really believing it because he was finding people in another state that they were really
Official people were
like
saying it was true.
Air Force pilots were saying things like, what? I was in
Right.
pilots on a plane. We were flying to England in 1978, and I talked with
No,
the
finish.
stewardesses, and they let me on the plane with the pilots. They wanted to meet me, and I saw the curvature of the Earth from way high up. We
Right.
were heading to England at night.
But finish the story, because that was interesting what the crew said.
Well, what the crew said about my friend about the flat Earth thing, I said, "Why is this? Why? Who's doing this? Why?" So I asked. He wasn't with. We weren't typing anybody. I was just like, "What are they doing? Why are they saying this suddenly, all of a sudden?" And they said, "Well, the crew, my guys, my overpart, I'm way up there, and I do a 3D remote viewing thing. I don't know how to say it any more lucidly. I will be talking here, but I will be here on the ship with them watching through my oversoul's eyes, sort of out of body lucid there at the same time I'm here. And I'm
Right.
watching everything they're doing, walking, listening, seeing everything." So I asked them, and they said, "Well, the government is putting out information like that. I don't know if it was DARPA, it was some kind of part of the government, something was like that. And they were putting out information that will confuse people and bringing back false things like that, flat Earth stuff, to see and watch and monitor on these websites or whatever on the Facebook or websites in general on the internet, who will be gullible to believe it. And they were going to monitor who promotes it. And they will see how they can hoodwink the people." And I didn't, I was, whoa, that's amazing. Really? That was a long time ago. And I still to this day know that's what they're doing. And the people that are falling for it are being targeted as people that will fall for anything, which means the false things they're going to do in the sky with fake UFOs they're going to create if they want to try to fake war. You know, all that information is what they're
Right.
doing. They're hoping these are the people that will promote it, and they'll be the ones jumping on that to promote even that other fake stuff they're going to promote. Agendas. Yeah, thanks. But this is what's going on. The Earth is round. It's also there's also a hole at the
Both ends.
both poles,
Both.
just like any other planets. And that's how they go in and out of some of the planets. And there's people inside our planet. I wouldn't say they're all great. You know, there's
Right.
nice ones and some that are not. Would rather we not be on this planet.
No, wait,
But
I want to get to that. The other thing I want to ask you is, do you believe that we went to the moon in the 60s in the way they
yeah,
told us?
yeah, we did go there, but I know we've been there before. But we did, and we also had a friend. Still have a friend. Sorry, not on the other side yet, but who was part of that information of what went on with the landing of the LEM. But I don't know if I'm supposed to say that information.
Yeah, probably not.
The
In other words, he had
LEM.
visions of things that happened, and he had problems with the computers at that time that couldn't talk to each other like they can today. And they were the spinning computers from the 50s and 60s and all that. So they were trying to figure out a way for them to communicate. And at that time, there was no way to communicate so that they can even get the information to the ships out by the moon to land the LEM on the moon and etc. Whatever, what we know from our friend is that there was a vision and he was able to get the information on the mechanicals for it, or mathematics for it, and it worked. And so that was the information that was needed to land it on the moon. But
with that group
in the
I mean,
first
that's
groups,
not talking about other groups.
there might be hidden groups we
are-
know, that went already there and have a base on the side of the moon on the other side. There's lots of information that's hidden. And what Phyllis and I worry about for most of it is who is the groups that they're working with. The people on the moon that are physicals like us are not exactly the kind of people that are like, we want to hang with, I guess I'll have to say. They're kind of scientific,
Right.
very scientific. So those people on the moon would get along with a lot of the people on this planet right now doing a lot of things here. So I'm worried about that. On the other dimensional spaces, frequencies on the moon that's now around Earth are nice Ethereum type people that are not like that. They're scientific, but they're not like Earth people going to the moon who want to take over the planets and Star Wars and stuff. That's kind of not what's real on the other frequencies. In fact, as a kid, I used to say that when I used to see a Star Wars movie the first time. I was so confused by it. I said, they're making like this is going on in our space all the time. It's not what's going on out there. So it's an Earth version of a vision of what they would like probably to do. Because we in space know that the people on the planet would come out and they want to put guns and things on their rockets or ships or whatever they have, and they want to blow up things or target things if they don't understand it. So in space, we have amazing beams and different types of things we use, but they're not to hurt anybody. They're used to buffer things, push an asteroid out of the way, maybe, which has happened around our planet here to rescue the Earth sometimes from disasters that could have happened. Sometimes a meteor seems to go take a right turn and go somewhere else. That's what they do. But they're not going to target a ship to blow it up to kill anyone. Although their raids could do things that are horrible like that, but they don't do that. That's not how they think. They would never hurt another. So to watch what's happening on this planet is disturbing to the beings and people I know in the high realms. People, they can't understand how people would hurt another, and they've never been born on a physical density like this. Maybe to
even
understand
Ashtar,
it.
a couple of years ago, Mark's heard from Ashtar. He doesn't try to talk to anybody but his own crew. So
I don't channel. I don't do that. Channel. I don't. I feel souls should be doing that.
But he was working
a good thing.
on a cool book with a friend who died, Tim Beckley, and was on, I guess it was on the sort of on the Commanders in Space or something like that.
Yeah, it's mostly some of Ashtar.
So he asked him to write what he knew about Ashtar. Anyway,
he was a real person just like us, but he's a dimensional Hyetherian.
So he spoke with him a few times. And one of the things that Ashtar said was, what's taking so long? We don't understand why the people of Earth are taking so long to wake up.
Oh, yeah. Right. He was getting concerned. Oh, it ends up that's the picture that we didn't have with us right now because someone took it. Little one. Remember at that meeting we were all at?
Yeah, I was going to say, someone took that photo from you.
They took Ashtar and they took Sananda. But it's okay. If they'd asked me, I would have given it to them, but not the ones I was using as my displayers. So here's Ashtar. And it's not a good picture in this picture, but to give you an idea, I have a tan on his face, but it's not in this picture. So he
said,
he was saying, I can't understand. We're having trouble now. They've given us a lot of information. They put a lot of ships around, more so coming too. More ships are coming to get people to look up and think there's more to this. Now they're starting to reveal a few things in different countries, right? The last few years, they're letting some of the information out because they've been asked to by the higher crews. Just let the people know some of this is not what it is. You guys are making it like we're all evil and dangerous. Most of the crews and beings out in space, I'll say, space people are generous, benevolent, kind beings. There's a very few of that negative type, but the majority is benevolence. So even the ones that they think are evil, like if they want to go, reptilian, they're not all bad. There are some, but just like humans, there are some that are bad and some that are not. Yeah. But let's say a lot of them I've met that in space out of body are very kind beings. This is Don Leal, and he's works with Ashtar Intergalactic Command, and he is a Ralgarian race, star system near constellation Copernicus, past a star they call Al-Bali in the constellation of Aquarius. This being a species is like a mixture of a reptilian, human-like. They range from 6 to 8 feet tall. And he's in the mid to higher etheric frequencies within second, third, and fourth dimensions of the first plane.
Wow.
Second, third, and fourth dimensional space of the first plane. That's where we are here, the first plane. Their lifespans are around 800 Earth years. They always give us the Earth comparison of hot time because their time is different. These beings can also have families on the low etheric levels. And they're so super benevolent and loving. And he is a commander. So this is Don Leal.
Yeah, for those
Doesn't,
listening, I mean, it's almost it looks kind of like Mr. Clean or
yeah.
almost like a car test dummy with reptilian
Yes, yes.
eyes.
Now they don't need ears. They do have smaller ears, sort of like ear effect here,
Yeah.
but
And
they
what is
don't
that?
have
What is
like
going
our
on in
height.
the skull, like right through the top of the, what is that?
That's that reptoid effect of on their bone structure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm jokingly not like dinosaurs. We're thinking dinosaurs, yeah. But
Yeah,
imagine
right.
a reptilian. We also had oh, I don't have them here. I have a saurian. The saurians are the ones that are more dinosaur-like. The reptilian types that I've seen have skin patterns sometimes on their skin. I'm not showing that on Don Leo. His pattern didn't they didn't have that pattern, but some have skin like kind of like iguana or something. I don't know, reptilian looking.
Yeah.
Others, the saurians have a little snout. So if
Hmm.
you see a reptilian type creature with a little snout, they're more saurian. They're more like the most advanced of a dinosaur you can imagine. That's how intelligent they are. They're so smart. There's a story I saw of a guy. Let me tell you this one. I read it was one of the true stories that happens to people. He's a truck driver, like 2 a.m, and he's driving on the highway with his big truck, and he sees dead deer on the side of the road
But
being
wait a minute,
piled on.
hold on,
piles.
before you say that, the
What?
saurians that you're
Oh,
talking about are of a higher ethereal,
yes, yeah. I'm sorry.
not a physical
No,
Yeah.
density.
these are not physical people. They're higher Therian frequency.
So the story you're telling now is a
Now, the one I'm
physical,
going to tell is a physical.
physical density.
So what happened? He's driving away. He sees some deer stacked up on the side of the road,
Yeah.
off the road. So he figures, oh, the highway people are stacking deer. And he was like going along, going along. Then he comes to his exit. And as he's turning on the exit, it's the ramp that goes swirled down, right? He sees on the left side, like 4 stacked deer. And he's like, huh, okay. Now he's going, then he sees a glowing light off to the far right. He assumes it's like a gas station light or something over there, like a convenience store is in the behind the trees off the road. And then he sees a tall guy on the bottom on his left on the side of the road as he's driving down slow because he's the big rig, right? So he's slowing it down to come down. And he notices the guy looks like he's in a military or an outfit, like some kind of jumpsuit, some kind of thing. So he's like, uh-oh, what's going on? So he rolls slowly up. Now he's looking at this guy and he doesn't look like a human. Now
Hmm.
his rig is high off the ground, right? But when they climb up to get in there, this being, as he pulled closer, was up to his window where he could see. So that means 7.5 feet, maybe tall, maybe. So as he's pulling up, it looks like a lizard, he said, and he was wearing a dark outfit, a spacesuity thing or something. And as he went towards him, he had his window rolled up. But as he's coming down slowly, he's going to be eye to eye almost off the road here with this alien standing there. And when he looked at him, the being, he said, looked kind of like a dinosaur, but like a human at the same time. And it smiled at him, and he smiled back. And then he
Right.
didn't seem sinister, no evil feeling, just smiled at him. And then he's going down with the rig, going to the road to get on the road on the bottom of the exit. And he looks to the right. It's a landed spaceship behind the trees. So as he got out of there, he was putting together that the lizard guy was stacking the deer to take for food. That was what he thought.
Hmm.
That could have been a telepathic projection to him when he smiled, because he noticed the things on the side of the road. So a lot of times that's what these beings are. They'll collect the roadkill or so.
Well, he probably was
Or-
also hunting them.
Or did he beam them in some
He probably
way
hunted them.
with a
Right,
few that came by
right.
the road, So that's what he didn't get a feeling of fear or don't worry, I'm gonna kill you now. None of that. And so that's what I mean. Some of them are not evil. Some of them are here. This being might not even be in the Earth basis. He might be a being that came and get some Earth food to take to a mothership somewhere else.
Earth hunting.
Earth hunting. We don't.
Right.
When I hear the stories or read these true stories of real accounts of these people are having, you can see that was a nice one. If he had rolled the window down and said hi, he probably would have said something. But the thing is he was playing it like, okay, I'm just going to keep going now. But they are good ones too out there. And and they might look scary to people. That's why sometimes they say we're not ready for you to see us yet. Sometimes they say that because they might not look friendly to us when we see them, but they are nice beings, but they might look scary to us too because we're not used to
Hmm.
seeing them. And there's another one that this one here. Again, if you saw people like this,
Oh, right.
I'd be
Right.
scared. But this is another one that's a benevolent teacher and a female.
Which level of consciousness?
She's works on the second, third, and fourth etheric dimensions.
Now, look,
So
there are
these people,
claims of, I mean, obviously there's Roswell that happened. I was even seeing people were saying they were passing around this video that is an interview with a gray, and supposedly this was a legitimate video that we have, and there, all those photos of, is this an alien body? Oh no, wait, this is real. This isn't. In your experience, and even I think this extends to the Paracas and these elongated skulls, and are they off planet? In your experience, do you believe that there are extraterrestrial bodies that have maybe accidentally or deliberately found themselves in this earthly density for
yeah,
others to examine?
yeah. Some of them. I went out of body to area, forget the area, to Hangar 18, and back in 1975 and six around that time, and I actually met through my friend Millie at the time. I went to her house and there was a guy there, and he talked with me, and he was military, and he told me he and his friend were guards by those different hangars. So he was at a different hangar, and his friend was at hangar 18, and he's standing in front of the door, and you can't let anybody in unless they have certain kind of credentials, whatever. But he said one day this friend told him he couldn't. He finally. You're not supposed to look. They're supposed to stand straight. He told me, and make eye contact with who's coming, but you're not supposed to turn at all. To turn. So when these people came, who might have been ambassadors or something, they had the proper credentials to show, and he was allowed to let them pass. I think he undoes the door in some way, and then they go in. Someone's on the other side of the door. But at that moment, he told his friend, the guy that I talked to, he said he was able to peripherally look as he turned back with the gun, and he saw a spaceship in there. So that might sound like the Bob Lazar stuff, right?
Right, that's what I was gonna say. It's fairly
They had
similar.
spaceships they were working on. So he said he saw a spaceship that looked like a typical flying saucer, and it was not damaged. It would look like a spaceship sitting there. So he told the guy that I'd met. So I went out to visit out of body. So I went out to the hangar 18, but also went down underground, and I found there was rooms where there were these freezer units that look similar to things they might show us today. They looked like oblong, oval um, freezer beds or something, and there was the dome effect on
Like
them.
cryogenics?
Yeah, they look like
Yeah,
cryogenic
right,
things.
right.
That's what it looked like. And I saw a few of them in different rows. And I went over to a few. Now I'm out of body, and I went over and I looked through, and I saw some of the beings. Some of the beings they're not described the way that we see them. They're talking about grays all the time. The ones that I saw that were part of, I learned, I thought was part of the Roswell cruise that went. There were a couple of ships. So the ones that I saw matched descriptions from another person I knew who's on the other side again, but from England, of small people, perfectly formed, probably 4.5 feet at the most, maybe. Human-like looking, not grays, had hair. Um, and I understood from my friend who said he had heard or knew about this. They had teeth, more flat teeth. Their lungs were of high capacity. They can climb Mount Everest and not have a problem.
Hmm.
They can go underwater and not have a problem, climb a mountain and not have a problem with their lung capacities, which were different than ours. They had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Basically, these were males and light skinned, kind of a human looking. So they were not, they were semi attractive looking humans. That's what they said. They were nice. So inside their body, they found that their nervous system wasn't like a Earth nervous system, like a tree branch effect, but made a more spiral effect through the body.
Right.
They looked like the food that they could eat would be something of a more vegetarian effect. So they had all flat teeth. They
Interesting.
didn't have any need of big food like we do. We eat like this. So they had found things in the ship that might have been food products as well that would look like a biscuit. But when they analyzed it, it was really high powered nourishment. So that they figured if they ate one of these or pieces of this, they would feel full and have total nourishment for their body beyond Earth, beyond what we have here. So I'm wondering if they studied some of that and come up with some of these nutritional things to make and eat. That was what I learned back in the 70s.
Yeah.
When I went out of body to see them, I saw the gray type looking people, but I saw those little people too, a couple of those people. So you know they dissected somebody.
Did you see any live ones?
No,
So you never
not
saw
out there
live.
where I
Okay.
was. No, I was just
Interesting.
looking for the hangars, and I wanted to go see if they had any bodies from Roswell or other places there. So they do have bodies, and in that time, they have humanoid bodies of people like 6 feet. So they do have some people that look like Earth people or something like a Venusian or something. They do have bodies that maybe came from crashed ships or something. That's why some of them I asked. Some of them I was so sad. I felt so sorry. I felt so bad because I understood the feeling of abandonment if they crashed and they were alive and they felt, oh no, how am I going to get home now? And then they're captured. And I actually, when I woke up, I was crying because I felt that for their souls. But I asked about some of them, and they actually said, the other side, that some of these beings knew this was a possibility that something could go wrong and that they were willing to sacrifice themselves for the Earth people to understand who they are. So that was another thing.
That was something I was going to ask. I'm going, okay, yeah, this is, and again, this is more, what people that might be playing devil's advocate might say, well, wait a minute, they're interdimensional, and also they have this advanced technology. Who are the aliens that failed driving school? Why are some of them? Why did they crash? What in the world is going on there? Now, look, that's not to say that everybody's perfect, and we're not saying that extraterrestrials are demigods, though I do have to say, with all the stories of healings and whatnot, seems pretty close. But it's always interesting um, that we might have evidence of something that seems so in a different level of consciousness. I'm going, oh, if you crashed, why can't the extraterrestrial council say, oh, we're just gonna disintegrate. We're gonna dissolve this on Earth, and they're gonna be out of existence, so that nobody knows that we're here. Um, yeah, I don't know. What would you say to
Well,
that?
what happened with Roswell, from my understanding on the other side, was the many of the ships, little scouts and all. These are kind of scout ships when they're not that huge, and like 30-foot diameter or so. But they're scouting, they're not analyzing, they're mining, they're doing things. And we have information of an. I'll tell you later. Oh, God. Okay, so they're mining or doing things on Earth. Uh, they travel ley line frequencies sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
patterns of frequency that come out of the planet. Looks like energy like this and goes like that, like an aura, and it can travel them. But also they travel with anti-gravity type things that they use. But from the Roswell one, one of them might have malfunctioned where it was traveling on one of the lines and just something happened and abruptly pulled it down.
Hmm.
Another thing they can do is militaries have other things they can shoot particle beams or what are those things called, like
You mean the direct energy weapons?
yeah, direct things like that.
They may have had them longer than we
Long,
think.
yeah. And Trevor
Right.
James Constable, they had they could, what's his name? Rats, I forgot his name. He had a beam that he would aim at the ships, and the ship would feel it, sense it, and it would start wobbling and dematerialize. So he was shooting at these negative beings that he thought the ships were coming from a negative energy, negative
Wow.
dimensional space.
Wilhelm Reich? No,
Was it Reich?
I don't remember. It's gone
But
too long
wasn't he
ago.
working with
Trevor?
Trevor James
Yes.
Constable? It was one of those types of things. But they would set up
Yeah.
a tubular thing, and he would aim it towards what the ship would be that he sees, and it comes in, and it would go like that, and it would go poof, it would just dematerialize, go back through the patterns of frequency they open up. But they open up door frequencies, and we've seen it. I know what they're doing. I know how they do it. I've seen how they do it because I've been on the ships when we did them. So remember the sonic booms in the 70s?
Yeah, yeah.
That was happening on North Carolina area out in the ocean. I was on one of the ships one time when they were doing one of these things, and they're not to affect the earth in any way. They were actually working with frequency patterns happening from negative frequencies that were occurring around that whole area. I don't know why, but maybe military stuff going on. Who knows? Maybe they were doing something with frequencies with earth. They were doing something, meaning earth people were doing something.
Experimenting, yeah.
And so they came in and did a cleansing frequency. And when it happened on Earth, it came through as a sound, like a boom. So I remembered being on one when they did it, but we didn't hear the boom effect. It was a more physical effect.
Yeah.
There was a guy that we met a long time ago, back in the 80s, his friend of a friend, saying
The guy that you were talking about,
he gave us a name, but that it's not his real name. So he said it's undercover name, whatever it named. He worked with military, and he was the reason he wanted to meet us
was a weapons expert.
was he was a bomb expert and a weapons expert, and
he could defuse a nuclear bomb.
he could defuse nuclear bombs, right? And reason we knew when they were trying to go in to get Saddam Hussein about weapons they said were there, we knew there was not, that was a lie, because our friend, the guy, enabled all the bombs that were there, so that even if they were underground, they were all disabled. He said they're all gone, they're all disabled when he told us that back in the early 80s. So when they said we were going in to get weapons of destruction,
Mass destruction, right?
Yeah.
we knew it was a hoax, and we knew there was a trick involved, and it was just a lie, only because of that guy who we knew that there were no bombs there.
Jonathan or something like
Yeah,
that.
he called himself John. That's the name, no last name. That was his name, but it wasn't his real name. He told us. So the reason he wanted to meet with us, and he told his friend, who was his girlfriend at the time, who was our friend, because I had these experiences on UFOs. He said, I want to meet them because something happened, and I want to talk to these people. So he came, and he told me things that I knew already back in the 70s about the layers underground in England and all these places where they have way down tunnels underground, not just tunnels, they're levels underground where they live and have everything they need if anything goes wrong top surface. They're not tunnels, they were levels, actual places.
Deep underground military bases.
Deep underground.
Dumb.
And I met a guy in England in 78 who went into those things because he was laying telephone. One guy was telephone line in his computer.
John's story,
so they're all matching together. So John said he was in the California one in the mountains out there. Which California mountains were that? The ones opposite Nevada, those Nevada mountain areas, California. There's a bunch of tunnels and, underground levels there of building that they've made. So he was out there called in to look at something. Being a bomb expert, the scientists called him in to come over. So he had to get extra clearance and extra ways to get into this place since he had never been there before. And when he gets there, he goes into a tunnel with a car, a truck, whatever he did. And then he goes down in elevators that are down way low down. So he goes into the elevators and he meets with the people there, and they're scientists. And there were some other people there, he said, that were there for another reason, other kinds of scientists.
Right.
But one of the scientists pulls him aside and says, we called you because we want you to see something, because we can't figure out how it works, and we don't know how to get into it. And he was intrigued, right? So he says, okay, let's go see. And he finds out from that scientist, this was taken from one of the Roswell ships. And
wow.
He drew a picture of it. But as he was telling me, just by the scientist taken from a Roswell ship, I said, it's probably one of their sonic cannons. That's the only word I can use for it. And he drew a picture, and I was probably picking up telepathically from him. And he drew a picture of it. So a long tubular, 4.5 feet at most, or something like that, 5 feet at the most, 4.5 feet. He's like this. So it's like that. Tubular object, a tube, like that,
Right.
goes out. Then he draws 2 cylinders and tripod effect on the legs. And the tubular thing is attached to these 2 cylinder things. And I remember him saying one cylinder was larger than the other. They look chromy and silver, brushed silver, he said. Brushed chrome effect, brushed like silver.
Right. Right.
And there was no seams on it and no way to get into it. And the scientist said, we tried to drill it, we tried to this, nothing gets into this thing. So we decided to x-ray it the best we can. So they x-rayed it. And that's what they wanted him there for, to see the x-ray pictures and see if they could make out as a bomb of some kind or something weaponry. What is it? So he looked at it and he saw the x-rays, he said, and it looked kind of, no, it's not a bomb, he said, but it is some kind of a thing that they're using as might be a projection, it might be a weapon, but not like we know. Maybe he couldn't figure it out. It definitely wasn't a bomb. So the scientist says, let me show you what we were able to do with it.
Right.
So then the end of the room, a big room, he said, like a warehouse effect down there, big cement wall down, I don't know how many feet, I don't know, 20, 30 feet away or 50 feet. He says a big cement block wall. And then behind it was more walls, regular walls. So he said, the scientist said, look what we could do with this thing. He hooked it up to some kind of mechanism, like an electronic thing. They used something that they had to turn it on. I don't remember him telling us there was anything that they could touch on this thing that could turn it on. So you were using some kind of magnetics or some other frequencies to activate this contraption. But I called it a sonic cannon because in those different beings that are mining the planets or different ones they need work, they have cannons or sonic beam makers that will blast a hole into the planets or the planet the size they need or want, depending on how much they want. And they're going to go in and mine for minerals or things that they need for their ships and for what they're working with. That's just not just planet Earth, other planets too. So these beams can create this, but they won't usually use them as a weapon to aim at anybody else. They just use it on planets like mining. So when he said, let's show this guy, let's show what it does, he goes, okay. So the scientist turns it on. And it had a frequency beam sound, he said, and it projected an energy ray out at the cement wall and blasted a hole through the wall.
Wow.
And he went back to see it. So it was a couple of bricks, one of those building bricks, the big bricks, cement blocks. It was deep like that. So that he went back with the scientist and he said, that's amazing. And the scientist said, if I had it higher, it would blast through the walls past it and keep going. That shows you the way that they mined with it. So when I told him that was a mining thing, they would do that to other things. It makes a beautiful glass effect on the sides of the walls when it blasts through. And he was shocked. He thought that made sense to him, that would be what it would be used for. Knowing that back in 82 or 3, whatever that year was. Now you see what they got today that they're playing with in the sky.
Yeah.
They're using it for the wrong reasons. They're using it as a particle generator or particle or something. They're doing something with it because it is a weapon. If it's used improperly, yes. But if it's used for mining and gentle things like they use it for, no. If you're going to go into a meteor out there and get your minerals off a meteor, boom, they use their little thing, however big a hole they need because they're little grays. So they get in there, but the thing could get bigger if they needed it. So in England, they have these tunnels too. They're big glass walls that I met another guy, Bob Strong, that had been there. I think Bob is now passed on, but he told me his story back in 1978 when he was underground, working underground under Warminster, and as a electronics and things they were doing for electricity or something, putting underground, or telephones, whatever it was.
I think it was telephones.
Might have been telephones, yeah.
Right.
But he and his friend were down there when they had the heads with the lamps on their hats, and they're all told not to go beyond a certain point in the perimeter of their underground there. There's tunnels underground. And he says, oh, England's full of tunnels. He says all over the place, tunnels, deep, deep tunnels. So now we know that's true, of course. So he says his friend and him decided on a lunch break, we're going to go down there and not go up on top and have lunch. We had sandwiches. So they went down into the area they're not supposed to go to and looked around. And they had their little pickaxe thing too with them, they said. It's a little thing that they could carry. So he said they're going down. They came to walls that were a room that he said a semi truck could fit in, or in their case, lorries, they call them. So they saw the walls. They got to a section where it's split in two, and they decided to go to the right. They said the walls were like glass when you touched them and smooth. They said they couldn't figure out how that happened. Then they walked a little further and they see a big wall on their right that looked like another giant round circular area where a lorry could go through, or another spaceship or something that's 15 feet wide, maybe, or whatever. So they go to that thing and it's a solid wall. And they tap on it with their picks and they can't scratch or anything into it. And it made a little dinging sound. And that was basically what they found, that they felt was not of this earth. And then they had a feeling they were being watched. And I said, you probably were when you did dinging on the thing. But anyway, they felt they were being watched. So they kind of nonchalantly left and went back to where they're supposed to be and didn't say anything to other guys that worked there. So he was telling me how they've seen these other tunnels underground in different areas that people he's known. So these are these underground glass-like walls, big enough for little scout ships to go flying through them even 1,000 years ago. Because they know
Yeah.
they're old. They don't know how old, but they've always been there.
Yeah, can you I mean, look, I don't know if you can give away this information, but is there a place people could go in the United States where they could see an entrance to one of these tunnels and know, yes, this is a real thing?
I don't know. I wouldn't be privy to that.
You could probably
But
Google
I
it.
think there are places you can go.
Because it's
I,
such a
I, I
wide claim, right? They're all over the place, and yet
the
they're
sky.
so
Why
well
would you want
protected.
to?
Yeah, but
Why?
if they're military run, you don't want to go there because they're not, they don't want to
You
say.
really don't want to go.
Yeah.
You really don't
You
know
don't know if you come back up on top.
who's
Oh, that's fair.
who's managing it.
Yeah, we don't know who they are. I do have another story, fast, very quick. I read in the 70s. Some people were, a couple of them were out in the west, out in the desert areas of California and those areas out there. And there were little hills and rocks and stuff. And they were walking around, chiseling around, looking for things. And they didn't know they were in an area that was military, but they found out they were talking. And all of a sudden they heard a voice in their head say, you should not be here right now. Turn around and go back to where you came from. And they looked around and go, who said that? There's nobody out here but us. We're out here. Then they noticed in the hills that they were moving around by were these antennas coming up out of the rocks area. You don't notice them until you're close enough, but they had already went through the parameter that they were told. There were signs, don't go beyond this point, but they did, because they were exploring around the rocks and things and hoping to find stuff or in the dirt, whatever they were doing. So they saw these antennas, and they realized somehow these guys are projecting through the antennas to them, and they're hearing them in their heads. And we know
Hmm.
that's possible. But back then, when it happened, they were scared. They got, they turned around. It was the military. Okay, we're out of here. But they couldn't figure out where's the speaker, who's talking. And now time is gone. But how they do that is they can put the projection up with their antenna, use the teeth or fillings in your teeth, and you'll hear the sound in your head of them talking to you. You can do that
Oh.
back then, because that's the only way they could
So
have
if they
heard
were
it.
doing that back then, you can imagine what they're doing now. And
Right.
we've
That's what I mean. What are they doing
we
now?
won't even go into what we.
When people say they get into certain areas, you can hear someone tell you something in your head to get out or do something. That's the technology they have. They
Right.
can.
Well, people talk about being a targeted individual and how that works, right? That they can torture you electronically. So many people make
Yeah,
these claims that have never quite. I mean,
yeah,
it sounds terrible what our government does to people if it is our government.
if it is, yeah. Who is it? But the frequencies, they can manipulate certain frequencies, and you can have euphoric. All the kind of things can go on with a person or an animal if they're testing an animal. But
Yeah.
we don't know. We don't go there.
But really, that's not our area of expertise. We prefer to try to put people on a spiritual path to getting off of these lower levels,
Yeah.
in on any planet.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
really our interest.
That's what we're trying to do when I came here, when I was told by Yehoshua as a teenager, and he said, do what you do and say what you say. And all of it, meaning what I know from where I come from, where I am with Sananda, we're part of the whole cruise up there that he is in control of everything. He runs it all basically, and he's creator. So when we on the high realms know who he is, we bow when he appears on our ship. You do that.
It's not information you're hearing from anybody else.
You'll not get that from a negative
Mark's the only
reptilian.
one.
They don't do that. They don't recognize who's who, what's going on. People on the seventh plane of this planet, seventh plane,
Still may not know.
might not know exactly who Sananda is or who Yehoshua is
Yeah.
as the infinite one,
But
the true
but
Messiah, as they call it.
The-
But that's who he is.
the
He
problem
does many missions like that around the different galaxies.
the problem for humanity or for creation is that the good thing and the bad thing is that we have free will.
Yeah.
And even the creator will not override the free will of any of its children. So if we choose not to believe something, it's not going to say, oh, excuse me, you're wrong.
Mhm.
It waits for us to figure it out on our own. And then if we go and we ask, let's say in an out of body state or in a dream state,
A
or just
lucid dream.
or
maybe.
just ask.
Yeah.
We just say to people, ask the question of your creator, is this true? Is this right? And at some point you will get the actual answer back, but it may not be the one that you want to hear.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
this is it's just interesting that we are that blessed that we have free will, but that free will can do us in as well.
So the information I brought back with me was not to share originally. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to share some stuff. I told Phyllis some things when I first met her in '78, plus some people in England. When I was not allowed to share it, I was told to only the people that I could feel right with. So the people I met in England had encounters or had experiences, so I knew them. I recognized my friend Mike from space. So I was allowed to tell him some information, and then we would go out to the ships together and they'd remember, and as well as Phyllis. So she's been out on the ships with us, but I'm not me. And when they would be out of body with me on the ship, they didn't know I was me. When I talked to them, they thought I was an alien. The other two guys, the other alien friends of mine, they said, no, it was me. I was talking to you. Or I was walking with you down the hall. One of my friends, he didn't know it was me. I'm walking with him down the hall. Once he figured it was me, when we were going out again after other times, because I was in England for a couple of months, 2 months almost, right? I was in England. So it's like we were going out of body every night, and I'd be on the ship with my friend and telling him things. We wake up, we come back, we were on cots in the living room. So we wake up and I said, are you back? He said, yeah, I just got back. I said, wasn't that fun? Did you remember what we were talking about? He said, yeah. So now he recognized that I was the alien.
Okay, but now
walking
when you're talking about being on the ship, you're not
Yeah.
talking about being on the highest arcana.
No,
You're
I'm not talking about being a ship right
being
above
on the
Earth,
ships that
on
are
the frequencies.
circulating the Earth, like the Ashtar ships, the
Yeah.
1,000 mile or 2,000 mile long, oh no,
2,000
mile long
roughly
ships.
2,000 miles long. And
So, the
500 wide,
problem
yeah.
for Mark is that when he's speaking, I know what he's talking about, but he forgets to point to the frequency he's speaking about, like what level of consciousness were they going to, because those ships can also have multiple levels of consciousness. So you could have different levels or different frequencies on these ships. So, everything, all one size does not fit all.
sometimes a person just out of body and doesn't understand much about higher things going on. So they might be coming out to the first frequencies of the ship on the high etheric levels here within this first plane. So they can walk and be there out of body in a dream state, a lucid dream, but be out of body when you're that way lucid. So they won't be on another level within the ship of frequency. And the more you learn, you can go to other frequencies within the ship, other levels.
I think
And they're just different. It's a ship, but it's different levels of it.
I'd also like to say about that, we're talking about very beautiful, positive extraterrestrial beings that are on these ships. So people that are of a very negative nature, or what we call lower frequency, are
Yes.
not going to get onto those ships.
No.
So if I mean, they could get onto some other ship that's maybe not an Etherean ship, maybe it's from some other group of extraterrestrials, we won't name names, that are more like humans, or more like unevolved humans. So maybe
Yeah.
their frequencies would match with that. But as your frequency, as your level of awareness, spiritual awareness gets higher, and you become like more benevolent and more understanding and more open, that's sort of your path to get to these higher frequencies on these beautiful benevolent ships.
I'm glad she's here to tell me all these things again. I ramble off. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean,
reeled me in like a little wild horse.
Well, Mark is not like us. He doesn't.
I think I assume.
He always assumes that you know the frequency he's talking about, but I know he jumps frequencies when he's talking. Just like we're I don't even know how to make an analogy to express it, but it's like we're all trying to move through we're all trying to grow in the lives that we have in any situation, in any lifetime. I mean, I'm sure you believe in reincarnation, and I'm sure you've had other lifetimes. If not, I'd be very surprised that you're doing a show like this. But
well, truthfully, you know what? I am not sure. I come from a very open-minded, but because I don't believe I have, at least as far as I'm aware of it, had any what might classify as paranormal experiences. I'm much more on the skeptic leaning side. Now, I entertain these ideas, but for someone that really is trying to make sense of the world in a rational way, which I realize is kind of the issue with that, with exploring these topics, because it's beyond rational mind. But yes, someone with such a strong.
But the only reason that it's beyond rational mind is because they have withheld true knowledge from the entire planet. If everybody, let's say, knew what Mark and Ingo Swan knows, like Ingo, I think, said what he had 6 lifetimes. I forget how many lifetimes. He didn't have too many. And Mark's already seen him in space on the higher planes. He now understands
things now he gets it.
That he didn't even understand.
And one of the things he said when I talked about the moon with him, and I saw what's in the moon, and he saw that remote viewing with the scientists that he was being tested with, and other things we saw. He says, of all the people on planet Earth I've ever met, you're the only one who's seen what I've seen in the moon. And so that day I was like, whoa. But that, I think, is all the things that pulled him. Like, we became like, that was it. Family.
It was family.
He trusted us with things.
But I do want to say, just to play to your more rational mind, Greg.
I want to believe, Phyllis. Believe me, I want to. That's why I'm talking to people like you both. Trust me.
You know what's funny? When Mark was being investigated by the MUFON group back in the late 70s,
77,
and so because MUFON back then wanted to be nuts and bolts. Everything was nuts and bolts. If it wasn't nuts and bolts, we don't want to know anything. And Mark was getting all of these photos of UFOs, which back then, if you got one photo, you were considered a superstar. But Mark was getting so many photographs of UFOs that they were like, what's up with this guy?
And then he could come out a skywatch with me, and they'd come by and everything.
So yeah, exactly. Huh. So then there was this one time when Fred had Anna had Mark's images analyzed and said, well, you're going to use my camera tonight. So he put I think a Nikon, maybe F1 or F2 in Mark's hands. And
he was a professional photographer.
Which Mark wouldn't even know what that means, but
at that time I had a little brownie.
Right.
I know what it means, but he doesn't. But so he gave him his camera. So he loaded it. Now, Fred loaded the film in there, so he knew there was no hanky panky. Gave Mark the camera. Mark went out as usual.
But he took my cameras to get analyzed.
And he took his
That's
camera.
why he did that.
So he gave Mark his camera loaded and everything. So Mark went out and took pictures. And of course, Mark got some anomalous imagery on there that he just could not explain. And so when the
They're on the website too.
so when the other group came along, the Scientific Bureau of Investigation, which was made up of about 1,000
At the time, yeah.
cops, policemen across the country, and the
Wow.
guy that was in charge was a New York detective. So talk about skeptical. He would put you to shame.
Right.
So he
This Pete Mazzola
he found out that Mark had a photograph. So he came
from Tim Beckley.
So so he came over, made an appointment to come and see us, and came to see us and said, well, I heard you have a photograph. So Mark goes and gets his bag of transparencies and photographs of UFOs and puts them on the
Manila
table.
envelope like this big.
And Pete and the other guy were like,
Wait a minute, what? I had Super 8 movie film. I had
So then
126
they
camera little
decided to do analysis
Slides.
on Mark's photography. So, he would be over here constantly and stay all night long. His cruiser, his police cruiser would be parked outside of our building right in front of the fire hydrant. But of course, nobody would bother it because it was police cruiser. And he would come up and he would hang out with us, Pete would.
Till like 3 in the morning.
And he would try to, and he would just talk to Mark over and over again to see if Mark was ever going to change his story, was ever going to, mess up and not, say exactly the same thing that he would always say. And then one day he took him to have a psychological stress evaluation test with that's a lie detector test that he found a person in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
So that they're,
someone they don't know.
And so they took Mark over, they asked him some very
that was
pertinent,
in New Jersey too.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
asked him a array of questions. And of course, Mark passed with flying colors.
Right.
And the guy that was the operator of the machine said, I thought this one would get him.
This question, he doctored it perfectly. He said,
He
hey,
said,
and Pete,
yeah, what did he say?
sorry about that. We told people don't call.
No, we're get the value. We've been going for a while.
What happened is he talked with the guy. Phyllis and I were in another room, like a waiting area. And then I had to go into another room and get hooked up to the machine.
Right.
And I didn't know anything, didn't know what they were going to do. All the questions the first ones are always like yes, no questions to make sure they can find your monitor, whatever you're doing. Is your mother, I don't know what they ask, just regular questions. But when he gets to the deep questions of being taken, he said, this is the question he formed with Pete or told Pete that he was going to form when Pete told him what he wanted questions about being taken on board a spaceship. Physically. So the question was, were you physically taken on board an extraterrestrial spaceship not of this earth at the age of 5 in a field upstate New York? Something like that. Right?
Something like that.
Oh, and then, the other part. And then was taken around the earth and around the moon and into the solar system and come back? I said, yes. So he thought that one would trick me up somehow with that kind of weird questioning, but it didn't. And then he had some other questions that were kind of extraterrestrial.
So that was that. And then when they took all of Mark's, they said, okay, we'd like to do an investigation with all of your film and your cameras. And they took all of Mark's film, all of his film. We allowed him to take the negatives.
Think of it today, you wouldn't do that,
and
right?
And the Super 8 film and everything. And
give us a piece of paper.
all of
we
the
have your film.
cameras, in all of the cameras. And they said, yeah, sure, go,
I was trusting them totally because
analyze it.
Phyllis and I had prayed about a week or so before. right?
So
About sending somebody that can help us.
I can usually do these things a lot faster than Mark. So they took all the camera equipment, and then it went to 3 different places. We noted on the website. I'd have to go look at it, but one of them was Komen von Kavitsky,
Brown Saucer Watch,
Brown Saucer Watch, and
Professor
Nimstow, who was
Project Visit.
But he was a NASA
He was an ex-NASA scientist.
ex-NASA scientist. So all of Mark's films and cameras were analyzed by these 3 different places, and it was a few $1,000s worth of analysis, which at the time was a lot of money.
It's like 1978.
Yeah, right.
Back then. And so, they spent a lot of money examining all of his film to try to find where he hoaxed it or light leaks in the cameras. And they said they couldn't find any. They tried to replicate one of the flying light bars that was on the Super 8 film. And they said they couldn't figure out a way to replicate it.
Because it was bent light. It was bent light.
So
it comes in like a bent light object and goes like this.
But the point being,
and they try to mimic it. They
after all that analysis, they could not disprove that this film had been in any way faked.
And Komen von Kavitsky said that, and the scientist said that it came out as solid light objects on the film, even though I was aiming my camera at the sky. And I told telepathically talking with them, and they said, take the picture now. They projected onto the camera film that, or come onto the film what they wanted to see.
And then the one time when we actually were photographing a spacecraft that flew over us when we were out with Betty Hill up in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
New Hampshire.
We couldn't be.
That it's so funny when you see something fly over your head so low that's so spectacular, like a football field that's like a
things bigger than a football field or more.
And
right.
And I was ripping Mark's arm off. Mark was, instead of picking up his camera and shooting it, he picked up his binoculars to look at it. I thought Betty Hill was going to drop dead on the spot because she just stood there with a cigarette, just like, and
as soon as it crossed over us, it disappeared.
But we got the lights in the distance. We got the light.
First thing we saw was 2 amber light ball energies sitting over the distance, hovering.
But anyway.
And then they went like this. And they started coming towards us, thinking they're 2 spheres. But they ended up being a giant ship that was hexagon.
Nothing you've ever
seen. Cut corners, long rectangular craft.
But
with appendages hanging under it.
After all of that analysis, nobody could disprove that the film was faked, that there was anything wrong with the cameras. And so that they were just sort of left, they just tried to disprove Mark as much as they possibly could. They went out of their way to say, well, this is blah, 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 blah. So then they brought over a map one night and they said, we want to go on a sky watch with you. And here's a map. So they gave him a map. And
big map that New York and New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Did they blindfold you?
Did they? No. We closed all the lights, so the whole apartment was dark.
Right.
And I stood in front of our table in this area here. We had a different table, big square rectangle. So the map was there, and I had magic markers. And you know how you can kind of dimly see the light is off, everything's off, but you could still dimly see. But even if you looked at this map, it was just dark. You couldn't see anything on it. So I said, okay, I'll just circle what glows to me. So I asked him, I said, is there any place we should be? My crew and friends, I said, is there any place that we should go to? Just make a glow of whatever the area is, and I'll circle the area. So I saw a glow. So I went over and circled the area around the glow. And for some reason, we thought of earthquakes or mentioned something with an earthquake, and a little glow showed up. So I circled that.
Well, that's
but
true.
Then for other globes, that was about it. I think that was the big circle.
So it landed up being Wanacue Reservoir. So we made arrangements to go on a sky watch with the investigators, and that was the night we heard the first time we heard a Bigfoot. But anyway, they brought a bunch of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we went up into the woods, started a campfire. There were people that were waiting down below the little ledge that we were on.
Yeah, we were on a high ledge.
It started to rain, so they all took off. So once they took off.
But before all that, when we were doing this, I had a whole out-of-body lucid memory of the whole thing a week before. I saw the road. I saw where we were going. I've never been there before, but in this whole thing, I was in the car driving it within the back seat or so, and they were driving. And I'm seeing a railroad track. I'm seeing all these things, and how they're going to do things in the sky when we ask them.
But I don't
But we
believe,
did go over a railroad track.
I don't believe, yes, sure. I don't believe that Pete had ever seen a UFO yet.
No.
So, you know, they were game.
Yeah.
And so we were out there with the fire going and everything. And, you know, it was getting.
And while we were there, though, we were in the car down by the reservoir area in a pullover. And these people pulled over, this group, UFO group from New Jersey, that somehow found out. And even Pete said, well, didn't want anybody around, but they somehow found out. I was saying to Pete what was going to happen. It's going to rain. It's going to stop at certain times, but nothing's going to happen until all the people leave. And we were prepared to stay for the whole night till the next morning. So we were just going to stay up all night. So on and off the rain would go from weird hours like 9 p.m., 10 minutes of rain, then it would stop. In the rain, downpour or something, a car or two would beep and leave and they would take off. So we climbed up went up the trail onto the top. And one of the guys made the fire and we were up there with umbrellas and stuff. But gradually as cars left, you would hear beep, beep, and a car would disappear. So we'd look over the cliff and there would still be one or two cars left. So I'm looking at the sky and it looked all cloudy. And they said, it's going to look like this until they leave. So I told Pete, until those people leave, nothing's going to happen. So they're trying to dissuade them by turning rain on, which they can do, and they can do that. Making it rain to make it like annoying, and let's get out of here. It's not going to happen. It's going to be clouds. So they finally took off, and it was close to 1 a.m. in the morning or a little after 1 a.m. when they finally took off. They waited till these people are gone. You can see the lights going away in the woods. And here we are up on the top here and look up. Perfect hole appears through the clouds right to the stars. And the clouds will be diminishing slowly, but they punch, they can do that. They've done it for me as way back with my friend Ralph too. So they punched a hole in the sky for us to see, to know that this was a setup that was all being set up. Gradually then we did the telepathy call, which I try to tell people about, which is part of Adonai Vasu Baragas. It's part of the call. It means blessings always in the infinite light of our loving, radiant, infinite creator. It's on my website, so it's there, but that's part of the call I would always give. But there's other things I say for them to come, my family, my friends, my crew friends, or friends with Ashtar that I know. So this has been happening. So we called the call, waited a little bit, and the first rovers show up. Those are the ones that look like spaceship that resemble bright stars high up in the sky.
It could be a satellite look.
They could look like a satellite, but they look like a star. And they showed up. They do their little thing. They take right turns. They just dematerialize. They did with Betty Hill. That happened too. So they show up. I called them rovers since I can remember.
Oh, and they would also
do this type of thing. Then they go shut off. But
shoot probes.
Sometimes they used to shoot a probe, right?
Which is looks like a shooting star.
Yeah, we've done that too. We've done that too for people in upstate New York. With like one spot, the ship is there invisible to your eyes, but they're really there. And I said, if you're right there, I see you telepathically. I know you're there. Shoot some probes so my friends can see. So they go, light beam shoots.
Oh my gosh!
You can see it. So then somebody else shows up and they're, I don't see anything. I don't know what you were looking at. They're still by the same area.
Well, anyway,
we did it again, 3 in a row.
Back to Pete.
So Pete, we did this. They did the rovers come in, do a little thing, get your attention. Here they go. They're scout ships, and Pete and his partner were there with binoculars and things. And 2 ships came in over the hills and the mountains in the distance, and they were watching them do this little thing that they do. So those were Pete's first experiences with UFOs, but we did have something come over us and go, and not a little tiny dot either, like a ship went over. So this was exciting.
And he was yelling out,
and he was calling out,
Joe. And he didn't know why. Now remember, this is a hardened New York detective.
I used to call my spaceship in the 1960s when I was about 11. If I was talking about spaceships to my friends in school, which I didn't have many of, to talk in public, we made up the name for the TV show Bonanza, Little Joe. So if we're talking about Little Joe, people will think you're talking about Bonanza. We're talking about a spaceship. So when I told Pete that,
Yeah.
we called it Little Joe or Joe. If we were talking together at a lunch break, we'd be saying, "Yeah, is Joe coming tonight?" I'll say, "Yeah, around 8 o'clock." I always knew what time. They always told me what time they'll show up if I just said it. So I said 9 o'clock. They'll be there.
So the bottom line is
So that's why Pete was going, Joe.
that was
Yeah.
the night. So he got to see something for the first time. And then later on, as we were just around the campfire talking, that's when we heard two Bigfoots or Big Feet, or whatever you want to call them,
Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
calling to each other from across one,
One came from one direction,
and it was
calling,
haunting. It was
And-
haunting.
and Pete's partner was also a person that lived near Jersey and knew about hunting and all that. And he never heard an animal sound like that. And I've been upstate in the woods and all that. I've never heard. I don't hunt. I don't hurt anything. But I've been in the woods and I've never heard anything like this. And we heard the voice come from, let's say, our left.
Like a
But the
mile
other
away.
voice came from the other direction in answer to the other voice that was
So
calling.
Bigfoot is real too? Is that what we're
Oh,
getting from
definitely.
this? Oh,
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
And
We
so
saw one standing on the side of the road,
that was another time.
very close.
But so when that happened, I said, "Get the chicken out of the campsite."
They like chicken. So
They took what was left of the chicken
the chicken
and ran
bucket,
as fast as they
took
could.
it down to another trail somewhere and left it. And it was just mild rain right now, a little
I said,
sprinkling of rain.
If the Bigfoot was hungry,
It was a call that was so weird and haunting. It did sound like an animal, then it sounded like a person. It was like, as best I can mimic it. If I try to mimic it again.
Where do we think this is from? Is it a extraterrestrial
in the-
thing? Is it interdimensional? I mean, what is this Bigfoot? You
Bigfoot
think?
are real, and they're a race of beings. Yeah, they're like, well, we're humans, but they might have a genetic connection. Remember, on planet Earth, there were other races or beings here that were human that were
Yeah.
here, like we are, but they went extinct. Yet, if they stood by you, you would say, "Oh, that's a human." But if you genetically took them, their genetics, they're kind of human like us, but there was always something else a little different. So they're not exactly human like we are, the human race here. This one now, they were another human race with a different genetic,
we
little
don't
off, different coding,
we don't think they're all the
but
same.
as if we're all related.
We don't think they're all the same because some people might see some that look a little bit less human than ones
Yeah.
that you saw.
We saw there's different kinds of Sasquatch out there. Some that are kind of mean, like
Yeah.
hurt people, that might look more ape-like in some way, or with different teeth. The one that we saw was very loving and benevolent energy, probably about 10 feet tall. Maybe he was off the side of the road. He was very tall already. He was off the side of the road, but his face was more human looking. I don't know how to explain it. He had lips like a human's lips, but elongated. He had brown eyes, eyes that look human, like ours, not like a monkey, not like another animal. And I was looking out the window on the passenger side right at him, and he was not even 4 feet from the car. So I'm looking at his face, and he's actually good looking for the humanoid look he had. And his nose
Yeah.
was not ape-like or any of that, and not flat like an ape-like nose. Was not like that at all, or monkey nose, nothing like that. He had hair coming like this, and the hair stood out about 4 inches out. It was very out on his shoulders, big, broad shoulders, no neck. Look,
Yeah,
like
definitely
this.
no neck.
Yeah, long, big shoulders, and the hair was standing up, and that's what we could see in the distance as we were driving. We could see this. First, we thought it was a bush blocking the green big sign of the highway. We were down towards North Carolina. I think we were in Virginia, in the big woods area off 95. 95, I think. And it was after 1 in the morning or so, around that time. So there's a lot of cars. We could see this thing. We think, well, who would have a bush blocking the highway signs? Why didn't they cut that to make it visible? So we're getting closer and closer on the passenger side road, on that side of the highway. And now the sign is still invisible. We can't read it. Now this thing's getting bigger and actually has a shape. And Phyllis and I went, it can't be a bear just standing on hind legs. It's got to be a Bigfoot standing up. And you can see the hair sticking out. It was very amazing. So we get up to it. It's dark brown fur, hair, but the skin tone was brownish tanned, not white skinned and not
Yeah.
black skinned, but more tannish, brownish, but lighter than his hair. The hair was darker. And the brown eyes, I could see the eyes. And the reason I could see this because we had a car at the time that was a Electra, right? Grand Marquis, 1980s. So it's lights on the side where the two doors meet, the four doors and the passenger door and the front passenger side. Between the doors was a light that was 11 inches long, about an inch wide. That was a dimly lit white light. So if you drove across highways, you could see the car. Out of the front side of our sides where the blinkers normally would be, there was another extra little light there that glowed as well. So it gave you a glow off the side of the car that wasn't just blinkers or anything. It was really lights. So this light that was here in the middle was the one that illuminated this guy for me to see him even more.
Because I was driving.
And Phyllis drove.
I was driving
at the time. Went really slow as we came up to Bigfoot. And she's going so slow. I knew we couldn't take a picture of them. I didn't want to, you don't want to make them scared. You don't want to hurt them in any way or frighten them because you don't know what they can do. They can probably hold your car and not take it like that. So he was so close to the side. There was nowhere to pull off the car if you had a flat tire. There was only like this much of sand on the road. If you had to pull over, you couldn't. And after the sand, there was a sloping that went down. So he was standing within the sloping section where somewhere he could stand to stand up. So all we could see from where we were was his lower waist up, like belly button up. That's what we saw. And he was already taller than the car when you're looking up at him. So that he's got to be 10 feet. He was huge. His head was huge. He was huge. And just looking at like this at the glass window of the car, I'm like this, looking up at him. And his eyes followed me, but I telepathically said to him, "You're beautiful. We love you. Stay safe." That's what I telepathically said to him. And as we were going slow, Phyllis was driving pretty slow. He sees me. He looks down and he follows me with his eyes. And his mouth was not mad or anything. He's like almost like that. It was like that. And so benevolent and sweet. I described his nose. If I drew it,
it was like a Santa Claus nose.
If you imagine, the old cartoon or an old drawing of Coca-Cola Santa Claus, if you remember that little button nose he has, the little bump here, like a little pudgy nose part here, and then his nose, that's what his nose looked like. It was a short nose, not a long nose, but for his face, it fit for Bigfoot. But he had a long spot here between his mouth to nose to lips. And that would males have that anyway in the human race, more that too. But the nose was definitely a human looking nose to me. And I said to Phyllis, his nose looks like a Santa Claus nose you would see.
By the way, Mark is an extremely fine animal artist, so he knows animals.
Yeah.
In a little doodle picture I have of him in one of my books.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't. It was undeniable. It was definitely a creature of some sort.
If you want to get the art pad, I can pull it out.
We're gonna link to this, marcbrinkerhoff.com, as well as intergalacticmission.com,
and etuniversalzone.com.
etuniversalzone.com. My gosh. Oh gosh.
Well, ET Universal Zone is our podcast now. We'll have a next podcast is this Friday at 9 to 10 p.m. on the Space God Hercules and the Space Gods, but I posted it to Facebook.
If you give us a link to your show, we'll post it.
Yeah, no, look, I am so not done. I feel that we could do a show every month and not get to the bottom of this. I mean,
you would never. Yeah, people joke with us about that. We could talk about auras. I could talk to you about Reiki healing.
Yeah, you're more interesting than the Dos Equis guy, I have to tell you. You're really the most interesting man in the world.
Well, that guy.
Truly. I mean, this is.
That's much fear.
And I have to tell you, we didn't even get to the stuff I wanted you to tell the story of, but I'm happy we didn't in a way because it lets me know that, you didn't just save your best stories for that night when I met you. I mean, we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I don't even remember we talked
I
about
mean,
any.
you told me you told me about the angel with your doorman, which we don't have time to
Oh,
get into
yes.
now, but we're going to in the future. And also, just to tease this for the listeners, Mark may have been the inspiration. Seems like very much was the inspiration
Oh,
for
oh,
one of Steven Spielberg's greatest films of all time. So, yeah, I definitely want you both on this show again, if you're open to it, to go more
yeah,
into
sure.
that, as well as just explain more of what's happening in this planet. Because, I mean, you've really blown my mind so many times. I need to recover.
Oh, dude. Well, just
I
say
love it.
tell them home is just my spaceship. It's our where oversouls are, and that's the inspiration for that movie. So that's where they got it from. But there's other information that they.
But don't give anything away. It's like I believe that Mark's view of reality, if people could actually embrace it, they, they, they'd be so happy. They would be just absolutely
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
fascinated by it, and I want to keep understanding it. Um, yeah, I'm sorry we did we went long, but not even as long as I would have wanted to go.
you,
However, I think this will be
you can
good
still
for
talk if you
people.
need to.
Yeah, let's do
no,
it.
it's okay. It's great. We enjoy you a lot.
Yeah, if we do angels, we could do a whole thing with angelics in the nature kingdom, and we can get into what happened that day. And my doorman is still our doorman. So
I know
if you
that's the
want
most
to talk to
remarkable
him,
thing.
you said, did that happen with you and many years ago? He would have, yes, it's real. It happened.
But
This is a good
let it go.
tease, I think, for the
Let
listeners.
it go.
That'll
So thank you for having us on.
Yeah, no, thank you both. You're awesome. Love it. Love that you're also in New York City. Marc Brinkerhoff, Phyllis Brinkerhoff. Thank you both again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. God bless you. And Adonai Vasu Baragas.
Thank you.